In this video, we're going to focus in on times 0 and times 1. They are both properties. We can rely on a certain pattern of the answers when we're multiplying by a 0 or a 1. We don't want to just help our students know what the answers are going to be, but also the why. So when multiplied by a 0, it is always going to be a 0. And if multiplied by a 1, it will always be the other factor, the amount of that other factor. Now, we've interviewed hundreds and thousands of kids with the math running record, Dr. Nikki Newton's invention of the math running record. And I can't tell you how many students that when I've asked them, what is happening when we multiply by a 0, they will tell me, well, anything times 0 is 0. And I'll say, well, do you know why? And they'll tell me, well, my teacher told me that anything times 0 is 0. So they've learned it as a rule. They don't understand the why. Right? Multiplication as an operation is equal groups. So we're multiplying by a 0, we have no groups of the size of the other factor. So a 0 times 8, you've got no groups of 8, so we have nothing. That's why the answer ends up being a 0. But we also want to think of the context also of it being 8 groups of 0. So 0 groups of 8 and 8 groups of 0. So I might have 8 baggies, but they have no candies inside. How many candies are there? It's still going to be a 0. So that's the kind of thinking and reasoning we want our students to be able to explain about why anything times 0 is 0. And in terms of the times 1, again, I could have one group of 8, one bag that has 8 marbles in it, or I might have 8 bags and they each have 1. So there's 2 different contexts of why anything times 1 will give us the amount of the other factor. It's so powerful for every brain to visually see the math concepts that we're learning to really deepen our conceptual understanding. So I want to provide some visuals in each of these videos. I'm using a website called brainingcamp.com. It's my favorite virtual manipulative site. And so I want to be able to explore these 2 contexts and why it happens we get 0 when we multiply by a 0, or we have the quantity of the other amount when we multiply by a 1. So here's one context I want to use. Laura has no bags of marbles. If each bag could hold 3 marbles, how many does she have? Well, I'm not going to drag out anything right now because she's got no bags, none of them that have 3 in them. So I know that my total amount must be 0. She can't have any marbles, no bags. But Laura has 1 bag of marbles, and if each bag could hold 3 marbles, how many does she have? Well, in this case, I can drag out a shape that would be that 1 bag of marbles. And then I can drag out some of these squares here to show the 3 marbles that are inside. So I have 1 bag and it has 3 marbles in it. How many marbles do I have? Well, I know that I have 3. So that one group of 3 ends up being 3, the quantity of our other factor. Now, I also want to show you another context for this. So there are 4 dogs that weren't wearing any collars. How many collars were there? So if I bring out a shape for this is, let's say, dog 1, and here is dog 2, and dog 3, and dog 4. Now, they're not wearing any collars. So how many collars are there? Well, there are none, right? So that 4 times 0 must be 0. Now, down below, we have the same 4 dogs, only this time they're each wearing 1 collar. Now, how many collars are there? Well, in this case, I can bring out a square to represent that collar on each of the dogs, each one having 1. So how many collars are there? Well, there are 4. And so again, our 4 times 1, we have 4 groups of 1 making the 4.